Hare Krishna. So in late August of 1976, with Prabhupada's permission, I returned from Bhaktivedanta Manor to Los Angeles to New Dwarka. And on the approximately 21st of October 1976, I got it, and I was situated in the temple, and I was, by the grace of Ramachandra, who was the temple president, I got an office, and a telephone and an office desk, and so on and so forth. And then one day I got a telephone call. It was from Ramachandra, and the first thing he said to me is, Kamala has been kidnapped. And I wasn't sure what that meant, because kidnapping was an unusual thing, and it had happened. There was a deprogramming movement afoot. It had taken root in the east coast of the United States, which is quite a ways from Los Angeles, so it wasn't really well known in Los Angeles. So I was kind of surprised. And then he went on to say, Ramachandra went on to say that he got a telephone call from Keshava, who was the fiance of Kamala, that they had gone to the door together, as I had instructed them. Actually, what happened a few days before, Kamala had phoned me, and I was 35 and she was 18, so I just gave her some friendly advice. She was concerned that her mother and father had asked her to return to her house to see her ailing grandmother. And she was suspicious because she thought that maybe they were up to no good. So I said to her that as long as you stay with Keshava and the two of you stay together, under no circumstances should you separate, then everything should be all right. And then I just forgot about the whole thing, and that was that. And I thought that I had done my duty for the day. And then a few days later I got this phone call that Kamala had been kidnapped. And Ramachandra went on to say that he got a telephone call from her fiance Keshava that they had gone to the door together to their parents' house, to her parents' house, and the mother, with alligator tears in her eyes, looked directly at Keshava and asked him. She said, "I just wanted to have a few moments alone with my daughter. Do you mind?" And being a very compliant person, he just didn't mind, and he went back to his car, but somehow the car wouldn't start. And it was a very well orchestrated thing, because someone in her family, maybe it was her brother-in-law, someone disabled the car, pulled out the distributor caps or something, so it wasn't working. And at that point, he found a telephone booth in a place called Arcadia, California, which is where her parents lived. It's a suburb of Pasadena, a very conservative county in near Los Angeles, north of Los Angeles a ways. And he told her that they went to the door. He went to his car. And as he was sitting in his car, he saw that she was coming out of the house just after a few seconds in the house. And as she was stepping out of the front door, several arms and hands reached up and grabbed her and pulled her back in. And then he kind of started going up to the house, and the house went dark, and the front door was locked. So apparently she had been manhandled or kidnapped. So Ramachandra and I drove to the scene of the so-called kidnapping or crime, and saw nothing but the house. It was a Saturday night, so it was getting kind of dark, and we didn't know exactly what to do. We arranged for another car to come and keep a vigil on the house. So there was a 24-hour Hare Krishna car out in front of their house for several days until we could find out what was actually happening with Kamala. So we went to the local police in Arcadia, California. Arcadia is a little suburb of Pasadena. And the police we told them what had happened, and they were kind of dismissive. They said, well, if it had been my daughter, I would have done the same thing. Kidnapped them, basically. So we went into a telephone booth at the police station, and we telephoned our lawyer and asked him if there's anything we could do about this situation. And he said, put it in writing and then submit it as an official kidnapping complaint. But it should be done in triplicate. So on a Saturday night, when it was getting dark, we had to find a place that had pencils and paper so we could make this document in triplicate. So somehow or other we found this, and we wrote the whole complaint. It was about 3 pages long, and then there were copies. And we gave them and we went back to the police station, and we gave them to the police, and they reluctantly accepted them. They had to, that was their duty. Anyway, about 40, what had happened, what we didn't really know was that Kamala had escaped 4 days later. This was a very high-profile case. And as we were driving back to the temple that Saturday night, Ramchandra and I thought, well, we'll just go to the newspaper of record, the Los Angeles Times, which was at that time about the third largest newspaper in the country, in the U.S., and so we went there, and it was Saturday night. We went into the parking lot, and there were no cars there. It was just completely empty, except for one little booth or kiosk, which had a man in it. And he said, well, it's Saturday night, everyone's gone home. But if you want, you can go up to the place where the reporters are working and see if there's anyone there. So it was up on the 7th floor. So we took the elevator up to the 7th floor, and sure enough, there were a bunch of about 100 empty desks, and there was one man sitting at a desk, looking very studious and very absorbed in his work. So we sat down at his desk and told him the whole story. And it turned out, his name was Michael Levitt, and it turned out that Michael Levitt had been a lawyer before he worked for the Los Angeles Times, and he knew our lawyer on a first-name basis. So he said, well, maybe this is interesting, an interesting story, and maybe I'll even write something for the Los Angeles Times. It was Saturday night, so we didn't think it was going to be in the Sunday morning edition, which it wasn't. But anyway, that was what happened. So what really happened, we found out later, was that the reason the house was so dark is they went out the back door and put Kamala in a van along with her family who were in on it, and two deprogrammers from Ardmore, Pennsylvania, which is about 700 kilometers away. It's on the other side of the country. They put a kind of blanket over her and sat on her so that she couldn't get up, and they drove north to a place called Calistoga, California, which is a good ways away from Los Angeles. It's about 700 miles, maybe that many kilometers away. And so the deprogrammer ladies who were in their late 20s were trying to deprogram Kamala, and they tried to get her to renounce her religion, said it was all fanaticism, and they were brainwashing her and so forth and so on. And they were working for a man named Ted Patrick, who was a fairly well-known deprogrammer, had been in prison several times, and had a very ghastly criminal record, not for murder, but for stealing and things like that. So Kamala thought to herself, the only way I can get out of this is to pretend that I am deprogrammed. I can get away from these people. So after a few days, she finally convinced them that she was deprogrammed. That was the word they used, deprogrammed. And she said, I just have to clear my head. I want to go for a little walk in the forest. It was kind of a rural setting where they were. So she went outside the house up into the forest, and when the house was out of sight, she made a run for it. The first thing she came to was a road, and the first car she saw was a police car, and she ran into a ditch and hid from the police because she thought the police were in on it. So the police car passed. Then she went back up the hill, and the first house she came to, she knocked on the door, and the lady came to the door, and she asked, could she please use her telephone? But she was a little bit suspicious, Kamala was suspicious, that these people were in on it, even though they said, okay, you can use your phone. So use our phone. So they let her use their telephone, and Kamala phoned the Arcadia police and told them the whole story. And they seemed to believe her. And they sent a car over, and they said, well, we're going to send you back to Los Angeles where you came from, because this is a serious case. So either they or the police in Los Angeles or Arcadia had fetched her in a private airplane and brought her back to Los Angeles that night. It was a Thursday night, and it was that long it took her to get away from the deprogrammers. And the devotees kind of knew about this. It was pretty late at night when she got back, so not everyone knew. A lot of people were asleep, but by the next day everybody knew about it. Another thing that happened is on the Sunday morning after she had been returned, there was a BBT meeting, and we had taken place, and I was present. And the meeting turned into a strategy session to get Kamala back to her place. And so we summoned the artists in the art department to make slogans on signs that were a meter high and about 2/3 of a meter wide, saying things like, are the Slavins torturing their daughter? Do they not believe in religious freedom? And this came in the Los Angeles Times on the front page Sunday morning on the 25th or something like that of October. And it had a picture of the picketers walking along the curb in front of their house. So this lazy town of Arcadia woke up on Sunday morning to see these strange people with picket signs walking back and forth. This was all on the front page of the Los Angeles Times, along with an article, a picture and an article. And it was a very high-profile case. While she was in confinement, Ramachandra and I went to the local TV stations and got them to get involved. They even sent a reporter out to knock on the door of a darkened house, and there was no answer. So, and then the reporter came to videotape her room, which was completely empty. So then on about Friday or thereabouts, there was a court case, and we filed a court case called habeas corpus. Habeas corpus means find the body or the hidden body. And the parents who did the kidnapping were subpoenaed, and they had to appear. And it was a very packed courtroom. The media weren't even allowed inside. The only people allowed inside were people who were sketching the defendants and the plaintiffs. So each time a member of her family, the mother, the father, the sister, the brother-in-law, took the stand, they answered the questions by saying, "I refuse to answer on the grounds that it may incriminate me." All this made them look even more guilty. So then we decided to file an official complaint about kidnapping, and they wouldn't accept a complaint about kidnapping, but a similar complaint was on a weekend night when there was no media and it was nighttime. It was a weekend night. They fined the parents $100 each, and it was kind of a slap on the wrist, and it was all very quietly done, and that was the end of that. And then about 3 years later, about 1979 or 1980, Ramachandra and Kamala and I filed another lawsuit against the parents. This time we won a $10,000 complaint against the parents. The parents were ordered to pay $10,000 plus legal fees and attorney's fees, which came to about $15,000, which in those days was a lot of money. So she won that case, and then we didn't hear from the parents for a long time after that. Well, that's the end of that incident.